poppin' YouTube? D-Star back again with another tutorial, and today we're going to talk about 5 things in Serum that can help you take your sound design to the next level. So we're going to do 5 pro tips, and we're going to start with number 1, and that is the global tab, most specifically the unison department. And the reason I bring that up is because, well, some of you guys might be like, well, shit, of course, the global tab, yeah, I'll go in there all the time, but I gotta say, out of all the patches I've seen, everything I've looked at, done by a lot of the professionals, as well as guys on YouTube, it's always that first and second tab, once in a while maybe the third. Well, there's 2 more tabs, guys, and you should know everything in each section because there's a lot of stuff in here that's pretty useful. So what I'm referring to specifically is the unison tab, and while the chaos is useful and the preferences is pretty obvious, also the quality, by the way, if you have CPU trouble, quick fix right there. I'd say I reach for the unison department the most, the unison section. I don't know why I keep calling things department like we're in Target or something. So that said, let's start at the bottom with mode, and that changes the detuning mode. So let's flip this up to 7, and as you can see, everything is equally detuned, equally apart from each other. When you switch to super, it's more true to the super saw waveform, which is not detuned equally, but it seems like it's I guess proportional or exponentially detuned. I don't know what the term would be for that, but they're all spaced out a little closer, a little further, and then very far away. And there's a slightly different sound to that. Let me show you the difference. Let's start with the linear. Again, very subtle. But if you want to stick to the true supersaw sound, you're going to want to reach for super. That said, there's also exponential and inverted maybe, and then there's a random section, which I assume just randomly detunes everything a little differently. Pretty cool, maybe something for modulating. But yeah, I usually stick to the super. Next up, we got the stack, which I know a limitation. Why does it keep doing that? I know a limitation of Serum that people talk about is the supersaws not being as good as silent. Well, the stack can help you fix that because now you can stack and kind of eliminate the 2 oscillator, or 4 if you count these 2 over here. You can kind of cut down a little bit on the limitations of Serum by only having 2 main oscillators. So the stack is pretty obvious. It stacks, the unison will also stack an octave higher, and you can also do up to 3 octaves high. So let's hear what it sounds like with it off. The downside is you can't lower the volume on it very easily, not that I know of, so sometimes it is nice to tuck in a higher layer a little lower. And again, you can always do this in MIDI too, but one thing I reach for quickly is sometimes that 1x. That said, there's also 2x, which is 2 octaves higher, and then 3, which gives you 3 octaves of great supersaw sound. You can also stack a 5th, 1, 2, and 3 octaves, and there's also the center 12 and the center 24, which drops a note down to become a bass note, which can sound a little fatter too, but again, I like to do that personally in MIDI. And then last but not least, these sections up here. The range is pretty obvious. It changes the semitone range of the detuning. Check it out. In most cases, I think 2 is good. 1, I guess, could possibly be useful if you want to get a little bit more dialed in. Again, I think the unison, I usually keep it down here anyway, so for me, I don't really mess with that. The width is the panning width of each oscillator and how wide they are. And then warp is actually really slept on, and I'll show you one quick use for it right away, and that's to grab a square, turn pulse width modulation on, and then turn that up, and then with that you can actually detune or play each oscillator. I don't know if it'd technically be detuning because it's not the tune. Play each oscillator at a different warp point. So and I like the way that sounds. It kind of has a supersaw sound, but it's different. And you can detune it more or less. But yeah, kind of a cool sound design trick there. And last but not least, the wavetable position as well. If you want to have each one play at a slightly different wavetable position, which is cool for something like the analog BD sine, where you want everything to play a little bit differently and have a little different a little different overtone to it. Pretty cool. So those are the tips in the global department. Let's move on to tip number 2, and that is a simple, really simple tip actually, where you can change the way that the LFOs or envelope modulate the knobs. Drag something on to LFO 1, hit Alt or Option and Shift and click, and you can switch that. And the only reason I bring that one up, because I know you guys are like, damn, that's a cheap trick, bro, is because I always get asked that when I'm in the studio with people or I'm just doing something. People are always like, how did you get it to switch like that? And I remember it frustrated me for a long time. So again, Alt, Shift, or Option, Shift, click, and you can switch the type of modulation you're doing. I don't know if it's like an envelope versus LFO type or whatever, the midpoint versus the end point on the knob, however you want to put it. I think it's a pretty useful tip. Let's go back to initial preset and let's move on to tip number 3, which is another simple tip, OTT, which we all know and love. Go in the compressor, turn it on, compress it, and boom. What do we do with that OTT? It's like a presence knob for your entire sound, which is really cool. But what I didn't know, and I just recently found out, which is again a little obvious for some, but will be like a holy crap moment for some of the rest of you guys, is that you can actually go in here and you can adjust each point. So you can compress and change the level of each compression. So you can bring the lows up a little higher or bring the mids down a little bit more. Check it out how it sounds. And you can do that and you can adjust. So it's kind of nice because I wish I would have known that before, because I'd always reach for the Ableton under audio effects. I'd always reach for the traditional Ableton because I felt like it sounded differently and I could get a little bit of a more tweaking out of it. But now that I know that, I might reach for this one a little bit more. So yes, you can change the levels of compression with each band, and you can do that in OTT to tweak your sounds and get a different sound or dial in a little more highs, a little bit more lows, whatever. So let's start over again. Now we're going to talk about tip number 4, which is a transient designer slash kind of attack in your synths. This is a little tip to add some bite to your synths. This one goes down in the matrix. I almost said goes down in the DM, but it does not, my friends. And envelope 3, you're going to want to push this down. And if you guys are a faithful viewer, you may have seen me do this before on some of my sound design patches. Lowering it down somewhere between 20 and 30 is usually a good start. And you're going to go to Destination, Modulation Global, Master Tuning. And this is going to do the entire tuning of the entire sound. Gone are the days of you trying to modulate, maybe up here, grabbing the semitones, the fine, the octave, or even the coarse tuning. You don't need to do that anymore. You can just do the Master Tuning right under Global. I think it's easier, unless, of course, you have a reason to just modulate one. So grab that. Source, envelope 3. We're going to perk this up a little bit, and we're going to see how it sounds. Turn the attack down all the way. And that's a really familiar sound if you use Nexus. You can hear they do that on a lot of their sound design patches. Man, Ableton's bugging out right now. Stop. I'm going to copy up this lead instead of using the chord because I think it'll make more sense in the context of a lead. It's actually a bass line, but whatever. And if you turn this up too high, you get that laser sound. And lower, it's not going to be as impactful. And then here, so I like it just subtle, little attack. And again, it's one of those things that's really helpful. It's really helpful to kind of take it on a polished sound and add a little bite, any percussive sounds also as well. And you can also curve it. You get the idea, guys. So check that out. It's a little bit a cool tip to add some bite to your synth. So let's go back to initial preset and let's cover tip number 5, the most complicated, I guess, most complicated, but also one of the most creative, inspiring tips. If you have a legit copy of Serum, which you should, then you have the most updated version, which this update came out quite a while ago. So hope the hell you have it. If not, update immediately. And what this tip is more for creating your own wavetables and rendering your own sounds out of very basic and boring sounds in Serum. And that's done using the render oscillator A warp. So let's say, for example, you take the warp and you do a bend and modulate it on a LFO 1. Let's say you're going to go like that. And it's going to essentially, this is going to allow, I guess the best way to word this is unlimited warping with one oscillator. So let's do the bend, let's warp it, and as you can see, it kind of fattens, turns, squarifies, whatever you want to call it, that waveform. We're going to hit render oscillator A warp, and it's going to rewrite that oscillator. We're going to turn this off, and then that's going to be done over here on the wavetable position. But it doesn't end yet. Let's go over here and let's do asymmetric, and let's bend it that way. Let's do it again. Render oscillator A warp. Shut it off. Now it's built into here. So you can continue to stack these wavetables, these basic wavetables with warp effects, which is going to create its own kind of sound. Try it, experiment with it. You can modulate each one different ways. You can do whatever you want, but you could take boring sines and squares and saws and kind of create your own wavetables with these effects using the warp feature. I think it's really helpful for kind of getting inspiration and maybe coming up with some cool sounds of your own, and you can get really cool sounds pretty quickly. So check it out, try it, and get creative. I like the flip, the mirror. You can get really creative, especially with some of the more complicated waveforms. You can kind of hear what they do each individually, what each warp thing does, and kind of get it closer to what you're trying to achieve overall. So check it out, guys. I hope you guys like the top 5 tips. Please leave a comment. I know it's been a minute since I haven't since I've made my last video. I apologize for that. Real life has been killing me lately. That said, leave a comment, leave a like if you got something out of this, and please hit subscribe because that is my motivation for getting these bad boys done. So thank y'all. I'll see you soon. Peace.